All right. Well, listeners, I have a special treat for you today. I have something that all of us should have if we don't have, and I have somebody who can take care of that, and that is insurance. I have Stephanie Jaynes with Inspector Pro Insurance. Did I say that right, Stephanie?
Yeah, you did. Perfect.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're certainly going to get into the product that you have for inspectors, and we talked a little bit in the pre-talk. And one of the great things about Stephanie is that they specialize in home inspectors, where I've realized the hard way because I've been around a long time. A lot of insurance and lawyers and things like that. It's almost like I had to teach them about our profession, and it's so nice. When somebody specializes in it, they already know the standards of practice. They probably, I'm not going to say you can't bring something to them they haven't seen before, but they've probably seen a lot. And it's probably a pretty good chance they've seen the problem that you're bringing. But before we get started, Stephanie, tell us a little bit about you because we'd like to get to know you personally.
Yeah, sure. So like you introduced me so well, I'm Stephanie Jaynes. I work with Inspector Pro. I'm actually the content marketing manager for Inspector Pro Insurance. So that means that I'm in charge on all of our risk management education efforts. So regardless of whether you carry insurance with us, you've probably seen some of that education go out in the ASHI Reporter, on our website, through various associations and franchises. And I'm also in charge of doing the research to make the program better, like doing surveys, seeing what people want from insurance and figuring out what challenges people are facing in the home inspection industry,
right,
so that we can address them head on.
Well, let's dive right into, I hope I'm not cutting you off.
No, you're fine.
Let's dive right into that. We're going to go off script because we talked about that a little bit in the pre-talk. So what are the most common claims you get? And then secondly, what can home inspectors do to avoid some of them?
That is the $1 million question, right?
Right.
Sometimes literally, unfortunately.
Yeah. I've had some. I don't know if I want to talk on air about it, but I can tell you some. But go ahead.
That's actually one of our big initiatives right now. So I don't know if you read the Reporter or if you read our articles online, but just a couple months ago, I think in August, was when we started our top 12 claim series, where each month we're going through one of the most common allegations that we see. Inspector Pro, we've been around for a decade. So at this point, we have enough data in our archives from all the claims that we've received to say with certainty, okay, year after year, these allegations are the ones we get the most of. Okay. So we made our list of 12. I could recite the top 5 by heart because I talk about them all the time. The first one is water damage.
Right.
Second one is roof, which actually is pretty connected to water damage because most roof claims have to do with leaks.
Okay.
Third most common is foundation. Fourth is mold.
Yes.
And fifth is plumbing. But plumbing isn't what you would think. It's not septic or sewer. It's actually, as silly as it sounds, it's home inspectors being accused of misidentifying pipes, not getting polybutylene or copper or different things like that identified properly. And then the homeowner has an issue with the pipes, maybe they burst later on, and then tries to peg the whole repiping of the house on the inspector. So yeah, those are the top 5, and we're releasing articles, like I said, every month talking about how specifically to avoid them. And how to avoid them kind of varies a little bit by claim type, but there are some things that ring true for every claim. That's setting expectations. One of the most interesting things we learned actually about mold claims is mold claims aren't common for the guys who are inspecting for mold. They're common for the ones who aren't. Wow. Which when I first read that, I was like, that makes no sense. Like, why are the people who are explicitly saying in their inspection agreement, hey, I'm not swabbing for mold. If you want a mold inspection, go somewhere else. Why are they the ones getting the most of the mold claims? And the reason why is because their clients aren't reading the agreement in full, aren't maybe reading the report in full. And so they have bad expectations going in and even coming out of the inspection, just assuming, okay, I paid for an inspector, they looked for everything. So it's all about setting expectations from the get-go and as many chances as you get on the phone when you're scheduling the inspection, on site at the inspection, having things like one of our favorite tricks for mold in particular is the clause in your agreement where you say, hey, I don't inspect for mold.
Mm-hmm.
Have somebody like the client, have the client initial beside that little clause.
Right.
And then if they ever come back, not only did they sign at the bottom, because sometimes they'll argue, well, I signed, but I didn't understand this. Well,
Sure.
if you have them initialing right next to the part that says, I don't inspect for mold, and you get that, they can't tackle you for it later.
Sure. Let me ask you this, going along with what you said, we started testing for mold kind of as a defensive thing, and I don't have all my data in yet, but I got the feeling that you had less liability now that you could test for mold, and you offered that. And then if they turned it down, then it'd be a lot harder for them to make a mold claim on you when that was an option for them that they turned down. Is there any truth to that, or what's your experience with that?
So, I mean, unfortunately, you can have people file claims for all sorts of things.
Oh,
I mean, one of the, over 80% of claims, at least according to our record, some other people in the industry will say even more. Over 80% of the claims are meritless, meaning theoretically the inspector did nothing wrong and they're still getting a claim. So there are no guarantees. However, we have seen things like offering mold as a potential service dissuade people from filing claims in the future, only because, again, it's actually a method of setting expectations, because by having the conversation about how you do offer the service and they can buy the service, it's harder for them to come back later and say, oh, I didn't know it wasn't included. Because you've had the conversation up front saying, hey, if you want it, you got to pay for it.
Sure. Well, Stephanie, we may go completely off script, but that's good.
That's fine.
That's all right. Because I would say near and dear to my heart. That's not really the right word, but this is conversations that need to be had.
Right.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into each one of those top five. I think you said the first one was moisture.
Water damage, right.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Give me a little bit more specific, because, I know that's a very general thing. And on that one topic of the claims you've seen, and then from that, was there anything moving forward that you think inspectors could do differently to, you're never going to make yourself bulletproof, but at least maybe put on a bulletproof vest, so to speak.
Right. So when we're talking about water damage, really what we're talking about usually is kind of that plumbing subset where you're having leakier burst pipes, malfunctioning appliances, moisture intrusion in general, and moisture can come in from all different types of angles. The reason we met each other was we went to Inspection Super Conference just a week ago. Mm-hmm. John Bolton, the inspector gator from Florida, he referenced our top 5 claims articles and this article on water intrusion and moisture damage as, hey, this is something we need to be focusing on because it is so prevalent. And then he went on for 2 hours on different technical things that you can look for to avoid it. But generally, what you're doing is you are trying to spot common signs of water intrusion and damage. One of our favorite things to advise inspectors to do, which sounds so simple, but it's really a good piece of advice, is it's to think like water.
Right.
When you're trying to spot a leak, think of all the different angles and things that it can come through, and look in places where you'd expect water intrusion and leaks to occur, like beneath dishwashers, under jetted tubs, beneath shower pans, and under the kitchen sink. often there are signs of water intrusion and damage, like discoloration, stains, things that are swollen or even moist to the touch. But then we highly recommend using technology to your advantage. The fact that we have infrared cameras and moisture meters, that there are things that can really tell you once you turn the water on whether or not the water is going somewhere it shouldn't be. We
Right.
encourage people to use those technologies and techniques, and of course know how to use them. Of course, the infrared camera isn't a silver bullet, and you
No.
need to make sure that you understand those readings and you're not misinterpreting cold air as a leak. But those can definitely be resources for you.
All right. Now, I might go a little bit beyond, but I do have this question. All right. So I've been an inspector for like, I don't know, well over like 22 years now. And when I was younger, you know, I would see a moisture stain on the ceiling, you know, and obviously you're trying to figure out, now, is that from the roof, or are we on the first floor and there's a bathroom up there? What's going on? Where's it from? And I would punch my moisture meter in. And, you know, I was young, man. I was green. I would say, well, you know, there's a moisture stain, but it's not active.
Yeah.
So wrong, so wrong. Because you don't know. I mean, it could be, you know, beside a chimney, and it's only when the wind blows a certain way, and it could be active again. I mean, now I just say there's a moisture stain. You know, have a contractor further evaluate. Unable to
And
tell.
that's perfect.
Fully,
Because
Go ahead.
the thing is, you need to inspect defensively. And inspecting defensively and being an alarmist are two different things. You can inspect defensively and not blow things out of proportion. But at the same time, you need to admit that as the home inspector, all you're really able to do is look for clues. Most of the time, you can't be definitive. Our foundation article is coming out next month. And it's one we're expecting to get some reactions to.
Okay.
Because we're pretty firm.
There, guys. Find that.
We're pretty firm in how we talk about it. And one of the things that we say is, we don't care how big the crack is. If there's a crack, there better be a picture, and you better be reporting it, and you shouldn't be minimizing it. The reason why is because, particularly with foundation issues, they're under the surface. They are not things that you can see with your naked eye. You can't really assess the full scope of the damage that is being caused and then indicated by that crack by just looking at the surface.
Sure.
So don't put yourself in that situation.
Oh, I've learned. I don't minimize anything anymore. But no, that's good. Couple of other questions that I have.
Sure.
I wonder, like, okay, with moisture stains, you know, you said don't minimize it, or you know, I don't think you should minimize any of them. What would you say is the number two problem? I forgot what you said.
So it's the roof, and usually it's roof leaks, or just the reality is most roofs last 25 years. I mean, it's not something that you're replacing particularly often. However, roofs require maintenance, and most homeowners don't maintain their roofs.
Right.
So a lot of the time, it's not even necessarily, again, going back to the idea of meritless claims, it's not necessarily something that you missed, but it's something that happens naturally over time with weather and different things like that. What you really need to be careful of is making sure that you're noting if things have been installed incorrectly, that will promote things like leaks or damage that isn't typical for that type of roof over that period of time. And then, of course, our favorite thing to tell people is take pictures even if it's perfect. And the reason why we say that is on inspection day, the roof could be perfect, but then a huge storm hits and it's not. Or one claim that we got really recently, actually, the seller knew that there were issues with the roof, knew that there was a roof leak, and covered it up. He covered it up on the roof, and he covered up the signs of water damage inside of the attic.
Okay.
To make sure that the inspector wouldn't be able to find it, essentially.
Right.
So lo and behold, later on, these roof issues come out. The patchy kind of repair work that he kind of did and
Right.
fudged on top, that kind of stuff falls off and exposes all of the bad stuff underneath. Thankfully, the home inspector had pictures. He had pictures of, all of the stuff covering the roof so that it did look fine.
Right.
And it's not your job to pull off all of the shingles.
No, we can't, because
to see what's underneath.
Yeah, it's not our
He had
house.
pictures of he had pictures of the attic, which looked pristine with the fresh paint and different things like that. So we could prove, hey, on inspection day, there was literally no way that he could have seen this. The leak wasn't active when he inspected either, so there wasn't a way for him to see, hey, water is coming in, or hey, this roof is poorly put together. So those pictures of the pristine roof at the time of inspection, or seemingly pristine roof at the time of inspection, are what protected him from that claim.
Awesome.
And then the claimant had to turn around and go to the seller, who was actually responsible.
Was the real culprit. I thought of something I wanted to say before, and then I'll go back to your roof thing. I've been involved in this, I have a multi-inspector firm, lots of inspections. So it's a numbers thing, whatever problems is a one-man shop you have, multiply that times a lot more. Welcome to my world. But one thing that I have learned, and that I want to tell inspectors out there, is to be careful. I'll just tell you right now, a lot of buyers, they don't read the report. They don't even read the report. So then they buy the house, and then they have this problem, and lo and behold, it was in the report, but then they try to say, well, you didn't tell me how bad it was, or you just say that on all the inspections. You're just CYA on everything. So I've sort of got into this situation now with my guys where I'm like, look, you can't write a report with just the canned statements. You click a box and recommend further evaluation by contractor, because what I've realized is lawyers will say, I want to see some of your other reports. And what they'll do is, if you've got that on every report, they'll say, you just do that on every report. So I've gotten to where more I'm like, in the old days, we used to try to hit canned statements because it made our job faster. I'm like, I want that report to be specific to that house. I want you to type stuff out, be descriptive, deep blue thing or the thing, because I don't want it to be like the same inspection report on a different house. I mean, you go out to a 5-year-old house and you say you recommend a roofer, a plumber, or that, what the heck I hire you for? I mean, you're just doing that. You can't, I get CYA, but you can't CYA, a lawyer will shred you. So you need to,
yeah.
You
there's
can
a
go
balance.
too far. Yeah,
I think there's definitely a balance. So I think from what we've seen from our claims experiences and the inspectors that we insure, is that having some canned statements for very specific issues is important, but putting them in when the issues aren't there, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And then also making sure to be as specific to the house as possible is actually a better way of defending yourself, because you need to know how the home was during the day of the inspection. The reality is, if you're performing 3 inspections a day, every day for a year, and get a claim, 9 months later, you're not going to remember that house.
Oh yeah, the inspectors.
So not only is the report exactly, not only is the report for them.
You inspected my house 6 months ago, and right away this is not going to be a good call. Old so and so late. Like, you have to wait till you can look it up.
Right. So the report isn't just for the client; it's for you.
Right.
It's absolutely. So that you can remember, okay, yes, I remember this house. I have these pictures that support my memory of how this house looked. And I have written in the report here exactly how, the attic looked or the kitchen sink looked or whatever it is that they're calling about, so that you can respond to them effectively and with authority.
Awesome.
And you can only do that if you're writing very specific, very clear reports. We actually have an article on writing reports that home inspection clients can understand. And we
Right.
interviewed a few inspectors, both who are insured and who aren't insured with us, had a look at their reports and had them talk about some of the things that they do particularly well, so that they could share, kind of their successful report writing skills with some of the other people in the industry.
Awesome. Awesome. And these articles, we can find them in the ASHI Reporter and some of the other.
Yeah, so all of the articles are referred to on our website, inspectorproinsurance.com.
Not
Most
to
of
be
them are in
confused
our
with
blog.
Dominic. Dominic,
Yeah.
Inspector Pro, we had that. I was like, are you connected to Dominic?
I know, it's such a bummer. I mean, we don't do much with Dominic. We don't do much with reports. We occasionally see his reports come in from our insureds when they have claims, but yeah, we're totally separate companies. Although I have heard that the brokers very rarely get calls for technical support for Dominic's software, because people get us confused. And Dominic, same way, he'll occasionally say, hey, I got a call from so-and-so trying to report a claim. I told them to call you guys. And I'm like, yep.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, Stephanie, after we get off, text me the link to where those articles are, and I'll put that in the description for the podcast in the video. I want to get to the other three. We talked about 2 of your top 5. But first, I want to just tell you a conversation that I had and get your reaction. Sure. Probably about 3 years ago, I had a conversation with a realtor. I was sponsoring a class, and during the break, this was the conversation. Thank God it wasn't my guy who did the inspection. He said, yeah, I had an inspection a while back, and my buyers moved in. And after a little while, they realized they didn't have a new roof, and all their neighbors had a new roof. And so they started asking around. Turned out there was a hailstorm. And, of course, my buyers wanted a new roof like everybody else got. So they called their insurance company to see if they could get a new roof. And the insurance company told them, well, that hailstorm was 8 months ago when it was under the other insurance company, the seller. So, they tried to call them. They couldn't get anywhere with them because those people already moved out. That policy had been canceled. So they decided to go after the home inspector. That's what they told me. And I'm sitting there going, what? And, so that day, I told my guys, I was like, if you go in a neighborhood and everybody's got a new roof except the house you're doing, or if you see any, we did a deep dive into hail damage because I don't know if you remember, it's not as bad as it used to be, but there for a while, everybody was getting a new roof for hail damage. And I'm like, they're going to blame us if they can't get the insurance company. So, I was like, be sure to look for the little things on the gutters and the flues and anything that could be hail damage, and write it up and have it further evaluated. But I'm just curious. I don't know if I really have a question, but that conversation opened my eyes to what, and what. I just wonder if you have any comments on it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think, there are lots of blessings that come with a small industry like this. I mean, you guys are really paving the way and kind of deciding what it is to be a home inspector, how the industry will run. A lot of you guys have had amazing success being your own bosses, building up these amazing firms and doing some really good work. Unfortunately, one of the disadvantages of being in a small industry like home inspection is there isn't a lot of regulation or understanding of the industry that gives you protection.
Right.
And so oftentimes you end up being the scapegoat. That's why it's so important to set expectations and to kind of follow your gut. Going into the third most common claim, which is foundation, I won't spoil the article too much, but we talk a little bit about how foundation claims are common not just because it's an expensive thing to fix and therefore people want to pig it on you, but it's actually an easy thing to cover up. And a lot of the claims we've seen for foundation are covered up either by the realtor, the seller, or even the buyer, trying to set themselves up to pig it on the home inspector later on. So it's an unfortunate reality of the industry. I think it's why so many home inspectors have the CYA kind of attitude. But honestly, the CYA attitude is not bad as long as it doesn't make you bitter or mad or sad to do your job. You know, it can protect you. You can mitigate risk, and that's why we're writing all of these articles and doing as much education as we're doing. We realized in the last couple of years that a lot of the inspectors that we insure and just that we talk to at conferences were feeling out of control. You know,
Right.
they were feeling like victims of a situation that they, like the litigious America that they couldn't change, you know. So everything that we've been doing with our risk management education and with our claims handling has been about trying to help home inspectors feel like they do have a little more control, both to prevent claims from coming up, and then even when the claims occur, that they're prepared and that they trust us to handle them.
Awesome.
And that's
well,
what
you know, you talk about being bitter. I tell my guys, I said, you know how they tenderize meat or how they season meat? I said, you know, they beat meat with a pointy little hammer and then they rub salt in it. That's kind of the same way home inspectors get seasoned because you get crazy people. And, you know, I've always said, you know, if we miss something, we'll fix it. But, you know, every once in a while, you know, never go to court if you're wrong. The problem is, it's just like, there's so many times you didn't really, but this person's crazy or they're interpreting it different or the expectations. I mean, you really didn't do anything wrong, but their expectations, there's not a match there. Well, what you talked about roof, moisture, and foundation. What's number 4?
Number 4 is mold. And like we alluded to earlier, it's actually one of the, it's one of the most misunderstood. So some funny background about how we even got to writing about the top 5 claims. When I set out to write the top 5 claims kind of article, I actually wasn't thinking of writing about the top 5. I was thinking about writing about mold. The reason why was because when I came on and started working with Inspector Pro, they had said, hey, we really want somebody to write educational material for home inspectors, but we want them to understand the industry.
Right.
We've tried having, you know, outside people write them, but honestly, like the industry is inundated with a bunch of advertorials. Basically, you read an article online that's catering to home inspectors, and it's like, you know, how bad you need an IR camera and how great IR cameras are, and then you scroll down to see who wrote it, and it was Monroe Infrared.
Right.
No offense to Monroe, like I'm sure their product is great, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you're selling this thing, and that's the only reason you're writing this article for me. Great.
Right.
So they really wanted to kind of break away from that, but they were worried because they're like, we need somebody who understands the industry, both insurance and home inspection. So the first 6 months I was on, I actually helped with the insurance side. I helped one of our brokers with their renewals, and I talked to home inspectors every day. I tried to talk to about 100 a day.
Wow.
And just understand what they were doing and what they were going through and experiencing. I took a lot of claims calls and pre-claims calls trying to talk them through it. And from talking to home inspectors for 6 months, I assumed, because I heard from everybody in the industry, that mold was the big and scary thing. Right. So when I sat down to write my first article, I was like, I've got to write about mold. So I call our claims department and I say, hey, I really want to write this article about preventing mold claims since, you know, mold is the most common claim. And the guy interrupted me and he said, no, it's not. I was like, wait, what do you mean?
Yeah, my whole premise.
So I didn't believe him. And so it was a happy kind of mistake. You know, I had the same assumption that everybody else did, and he pulled up all the data that we'd had, and that's how we went through and developed, you know, the top 12 claims. We looked at our data over the years, and he said mold is coming in fourth.
Yeah.
And it's not the biggest issue like everybody thinks, and it's not as common against mold assessors as everybody thinks. So when it comes to mold, like I said, it's usually the guys who aren't inspecting for it, and the best way to avoid it is setting expectations, making sure that people understand if you're not inspecting for it, they can't peg you for it. And then also understanding what mold is. Like, one of the reasons mold claims are so common is people think mold is a lot worse than it is. We have a great quote in the article from a home inspector that says, mold's kind of everywhere.
It is.
And most of the time it's not dangerous. And
if
you know,
eat cheese today, you you were dealing with molds.
Right. I mean, and it's unfortunate because when I was doing research for the article, after I learned that it was fourth, I was doing research to write the article anyway, because it's still worth writing about. But I was like, okay, what are the average Joes of the world worried that mold's going to do to them? Why do they think it's such an issue that they're coming back on the inspectors to have them pay to get rid of it or whatever? And I found off the wall stuff. Like, obviously, like I expected, you know, the black mold stuff, like to get you sick. But there were people saying that mold caused depression, that mold caused various like mental disabilities or different like things, that it affected mood.
It's gluten now. I'm just kidding.
I mean, mold was like the magic bad thing on the internet. And I was like, wow, no wonder.
Well,
again, it's coming from bad expectations from the community, both in what the home inspection actually covers, but also in what mold actually is. So if people find it, you know, in their shower or wherever, they immediately think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to get depressed. Or this is the reason I've been depressed.
Well, I got a couple things to say about mold, because we've had some mold, you know, 22 years, certainly. Couple of things. I mean, it isn't required for the home inspector. It's actually excluded. But obviously, if we see it or conditions for it, we're going to mention it. We do test for it, though. But, you know, the big thing about mold to me is moisture. I mean, if you see high moisture, you got a chance of mold, a really good chance of mold, and especially if you go in the crawl space and it's above 20%, and the insulation's stringy, hanging down, which means, you know, water's trying to evaporate, can't get down. You know, you got a good chance for mold. The thing that I find that may be driving it and may be scaring people is, there's so many mold remediation crooks. I mean, mold remediation specialists out there that, you know, they are going to sell a mold remediation job, whether you need it or not. You know, I used to think that, you know, if somebody sees a commercial and it scares the crap out of them and they call, hey, come check my ducts, come check my crawl space, I would bet you 90% of the time that mold person can come out there and tell them, yeah, you need mold remediation. I mean, they're counting their money on the way out there. We got a lot of them. They already think it. I mean, it's a rare, you know, I used to think they would come and say, no, you're all right. You're dry. You're fine. No, they're not going to do that. They're mold remediation salesmen. And I don't like that because they use fear, all that stuff you see on the internet and all that crazy stuff. So I think that does drive some of it. I know there used to be, you know, like a lot of pest control companies got into it. And, you know, I'm not going to name a name, but there's one here in town. And I know probably how this went down. They were probably in a board meeting. And they're like, you know, we make X amount killing ants, we make X amount killing roaches. But you know what? You know how many crawl spaces are in this city? If we can do a mold remediation on a certain percentage, you know how much profit we'll make? So then what they did was they pretty much started scaring everybody into thinking they needed a mold remediation. And I have a problem with that. I mean, not everybody needed it. So I think that kind of drives it. And then, you know, once you put that scare tactic in somebody's mind, even if it's not true, it's like psychosomatic or something. You know, like you were saying, they read that, oh, mold gives me a headache. I think that's what's causing my headache. You can't even unconvince them that's bogus. People, they've so internalized it now that it's like you can't. So I don't know. That's my problem, and I hate those mold remediation. Some of them. There are some good ones. A bunch of crooks.
Yeah, they're not all bad, but it's hard when you're competing with falsehood, right? When
Right.
you're trying to fight something that's not even true. But one of the things that we tell our guys and that we have found encouraging is if you're being truthful and if you're speaking from facts and if you can show them the facts, that's your best defense. And the nice thing about your job is that hopefully when a client is hiring you, they're hiring you because they think that you actually do have the ability to find signs of potential defects to basically inform them of, some of the major things that could be wrong with their home before they decide to make a purchase. And in so doing, they're kind of relinquishing their trust to you. They're saying, hey, I'm trusting you to kind of tell me what I can't know on my own and for myself. And it's through that relationship, if you can use that trust and say, hey, you've hired me to look out for you. I'm doing the absolute best that I can. And here's the truth. Here's the accurate information. Here's what you really can expect from this home inspection, and here's what you really can expect if you run into these issues later on. It was interesting when we did an article, I think last month, about mitigating risk while hiring. So hiring new home inspectors for your firm.
Right.
I was expecting all the home inspectors that we interviewed to talk about technical. We have to hire somebody who has, 10 years of home inspection experience previously, or at least was in construction or building or something like that previously.
Right.
Almost everybody we talked to was like, nope, we hire personality and then we do all the training in-house. And I was like, well, why? Like, why personality? Why is that important? And they were like, well, we need them to be able to talk to people.
Communicate.
We need them to be able to, deliver the information in a way that they can understand. Because if you can develop that trust, if you can make your client know, like, hey, I am doing my best and I am doing my best to look out for you, instead of calling you, or basically instead of serving you with papers saying, hey, I'm filing a claim against you, you're going to get a phone call and say, hey, I found this. What's going on?
Sure.
You can kind of control the level of inflammatory response that you get when they find something that they don't understand.
Nobody wants to turn in a claim. I mean, I try my best to not get there, because that's to me, that's like Armageddon. It unfortunately does happen, but if I can handle it, I'm going to handle it.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we offer pre-claims assistance, and we were one of the first people to do it in our industry. So pre-claims assistance is designed to stifle complaints before they turn into claims. So we were realizing in our industry that a lot of inspectors are scared to tell the insurance company if they get a complaint. They're afraid that they're going to tell us, and then we're going to say, oh yeah, we understand, and then we're going to put it on their last runs, like secretly, even though we say we're not going to. That's not the case. So we developed this program called Pre-Claims Assistance, which is designed, it's actually handled out of our office by a separate team, our claims team. And we don't even see it. So it doesn't affect your premium. It doesn't affect your loss run. It doesn't affect anything. And it was built that way on purpose so that people feel comfortable calling in. And what they essentially do is say you get a call saying, hey, I found this thing, I'm upset about it. They haven't demanded money. They haven't contacted a lawyer. They're not demanding your insurance information, but you think it could get there.
Right.
You call pre-claims assistance, and we'll start working on it for free. They'll talk to you, they'll give you, and you kind of decide how you want to handle it. You could just give us notice and leave it at that, because most insurance companies require you to give some notice if you think there is something that might turn into a claim. So you can give notice without it being reported yet. You can get advice. Like our claims team will sit on the phone with you for an hour, 2 hours, however much you need to hash it out and develop a plan. They'll write you letters. Sometimes we'll even send out attorneys early to do some preliminary work. And 80% of the time, we get rid of it. Nice. 80% of the complaints we get don't turn into claims. And the ones that do, because the inspectors tried to stifle it before it turned into a claim, we'll give them up to 50% off their deductible. So they're not even paying.
I need to switch to you guys.
Yeah, you do.
I need to find out how much y'all charge and whatnot. That'd have to be something.
And there are plenty of other companies out there. Like there are a couple of insureds that we had who previously, or even still do, have attorneys or other programs that they've hired within the industry to perform that service. But the nice thing about pre-claims assistance is it comes for free with your policy.
Nice.
Because we want you to use it. We don't want you and the thing is, if you're having to do something like pay per inspector or pay for it twice, you're paying your insurance premium and then you're sending just as much money to another lawyer, that doesn't make sense.
Right. So, and there's probably a disconnect too. By the time you hand it off, you got to meet, and then with you, it's all the same. So they already are probably aware of it, pretty well educated.
And that's the reason we give the discount to the deductible if you use it, even if it turns into a claim, because claims get resolved faster if pre-claims assistance was used first. And if it's resolved faster, it can be resolved cheaper. And the reason why it's resolved faster and cheaper is because we already know about it, so we can respond immediately. We don't have to do the research of reviewing the report and the inspection agreement and talking to the inspector, because we've been doing that already.
Right.
All of the preliminary work that can take like a week is done. We can respond immediately to that person's lawyer, which really helps.
Awesome. Well, I got to take you back to number 5. We forgot number 5. What was number 5?
Number 5 is plumbing.
Okay,
and
tell
again,
us
it's
what specifically and how to stay out of inspector jail or insurance jail or whatever.
We don't have a jail. We try to rehabilitate people after they feel like they've gone to jail by getting a claim. That's the first 10 minutes of claims reporting calls, is calming people down.
They take it personal. I mean, home inspectors take it personal.
Yeah.
They feel like they did a great job. Half these times, I'll tell you right now, like say if it's a plumbing issue, the person has a plumbing issue, but we look at the report and we're like, man, I got these people a new roof. I spent 5 hours at that house. How can they be doing this to me? That's the way a home inspector feels.
And it makes sense. I mean, what's hard is, it's not like a lot of other businesses where when you're suing the business, you as a person are so far removed from the experience. A lot of these guys, it's their business. Yeah. And sometimes they're the only ones in the business.
Right. And they did
so it definitely feels personal, because it kind of is personal. Like they're the ones who performed the inspection. There's the ones who scheduled the inspection. They're the ones who took the claims call. Like, we get it. And so we try to make it we try to relieve as much stress as possible during the claims handling experience. But with plumbing in particular, so not to be confused with, septic, sewer, waste issues, plumbing problems, they're arising from drainage leaks and misidentification. And when I say misidentification, I'm talking about, knowing the difference between copper, CPVC, polybutylene, PEX, and identifying those. Where we run into issues is a lot of the times the plumbing is out of sight and you can't see what you can't see.
Right.
So again, it comes to setting expectations so that the client knows, there's no way I could have found that. It was underground.
Right.
Funny story. So my sister-in-law bought her first home a few years ago. And it was when I was already working for Inspector Pro. They had a home inspection, called me 3 months later, and they said, hey, we know you know about home inspection claims. We're wondering if we should sue our home inspector.
No, the answer is no.
And I told them that I was like, I'm pretty sure my answer is going to be no, but tell me what you were thinking.
Right.
And they listed all these things, one of which was they actually found out that after the home inspection that when they were running water or using the restroom, it was an old house, pipes weren't going anywhere. They were going straight into the ground.
What?
Uh-huh.
Where was this?
It was in Utah.
Oh, it's an old farmhouse or something?
It was an old little farmhouse. They bought it thinking it would be a fixer-upper. They didn't really understand how much of a fixer-upper it was going to be.
Right.
But all of the issues that they talked about, including this one, first question I asked was, well, did you pay for a sewer scope inspection? Didn't even ask about the report yet. Did you pay for a sewer scope inspection? Because the only way that inspector could have known where the pipes would go is if he put a camera down there.
Right.
And she said no. And I was like, then there's no way he could have known.
Right.
And by the end of the call with her, she's like, it's disappointing, but it was helpful to know, like, all of these things that I was going to peg on the inspector, it was stuff that I would have had to pay for separately or just isn't covered by an inspection ever. She's like, I realized I really didn't know.
Owed you a bottle of wine or something. He probably doesn't even know it, but you saved him big time.
Yeah, I'd like to stay out of it as much as possible. After that phone call, I sent a message to my in-laws saying, and I don't want to be consulted about this stuff ever again, just because.
I turned down doing inspections for relatives because it's not worth it. It's like, I don't want your water heater to blow up 6 months from now and you secretly blame me at the dinner table and you're passive aggressive towards me. It's just not worth the $400. Call somebody else. No good. Every time you do, something for family or friends, those are the ones that invite you. We're up against a break here, Stephanie. Let's go take a hard break real quick, and then I want to come back and ask you some questions about rates and deductibles and things like that.
Hi, I'm Preston Sandlin, and I own Home Inspection Carolina, and I wanted to show you a way that you can get more home inspection leads. So what you can do, you obviously can do a pre-inspection, but I understand some people don't want to do that. But what it is, we set out a sign, and this sign is going to have information about the house. When you text that, you can have information about the house. You could have a home inspection discount. You could also lead them to a website. So this is my daughter, Sarah Margaret. Say hi.
Hi.
So Sarah Margaret, you pretend like you're buying this house, and I want you to text. You're riding by, doing a kiki dance, whatever, and you see, hey, I'm interested in this house. I'd like you to text info to that number, okay?
Okay.
So go ahead and do that now. She's interested in the house. So for more information on this house, she's going to text that and a home inspection discount. Okay, so I just got the lead in the buyer. Now, you should get something in a second. So what'd you get? So click on the top one there, yeah. So you'll see what she gets. So she's going to get information about the house. And meanwhile, I got the lead. All right, so scroll up just a little bit. Yeah, there you go. So there's like a little video about the house. Of course, your phone's really slow. There's multiple pictures of the house. And whatnot, and well, there goes the video finally. I'm gonna have to edit this a little bit, but the cool thing is read what it says there. Read that out loud, Samara.
This is a demo house. It is not for sale. It is for demonstration purposes only. Information about the house would go here if this house was actually for sale. If you are interested in getting a home inspection, call 704-542-6575 with the code HIC 2018. You can receive a $23 discount on a home inspection on this house or any house you decide to buy in this area. Discount code HIC 2018. 704-542-6575.
Okay. Now, well, I talk a little bit. Text that same number, text info 1. You can just use the same number, text info 1 now. So what I'm going to do is show you how we did a couple of other things with it. But again, the whole thing is to drive leads. Now I have the lead and I can follow up with her. She's a potential buyer. I can do a drip campaign. Let me go one. Now click on that. What you got for no, top there. Edit this. See how there's a discount code there, home inspection discount. All right, last one. Go back to that same text and text info 3. So this is something of value that's not a discount code. It's an inspection list. So I can put that sign anywhere. And again, see, I'm getting the lead. So I'll click on here to the lead. And you see, I just got these leads. Is your number 704-7? Oh, I better not say that out loud because guys will be calling you. But obviously, all right, so did you do info 3? Mm-hmm. All right, now click on that top one and make show what that shows on there. So, all 3, I captured the lead. I did information about the house with a home inspection discount. I can connect it to a URL that has a home inspection discount, a URL with a something giveaway, that's checklist, radon information, you name it. But we capture the lead. So everybody who texts this, we get that home inspection lead. They're gonna need a home inspection. They're also gonna need probably a realtor. So the realtor is gonna like us as well. So check out inspectedhouses.com. It's a new way to get leads for your home inspection business and leads for the realtor as well. Thank you.
All right. Well, I am here back with Stephanie of Inspector Pro Insurance. Is that correct? What's the website?
Yep.
Is it Inspector Pro Insurance? What's the website?
InspectorProInsurance.com.
Okay. Well, tell us, we talked about in the first half of the show, we're totally off script, but that's all right because this is good stuff. I about throw the script out. But this is questions that I've had. This is great. There's questions I've had too. I've never really been one-on-one with an insurance person. In fact, my wife usually kind of deals with it, and she's like, "Oh, the rates went up again." Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you offer. I'm assuming you offer general liability and E&O, and are there breakdowns like, usually with a higher deductible, it's a less rate. And then what do you offer or recommend or whatever, like single-man shop, 3-man shop, 5-man shop, 10-man shop, that's it. I'll just sorry, hit you with
all good questions. No, they're all good questions. We love questions. Call us and ask us questions. That's what we're here for. So we offer E&O or errors of emissions and general liability insurance, usually in a package. Sometimes people want them separately, and the reason we do both is because, frankly, we see claims for both.
Right.
Our typical policy, actually, you're only paying for errors and emissions, and we'll eat the cost of general liability just so that you have it, because we think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
We're the type of company, we don't want to be the once a year kind of relationship. We don't want you to just get a renewal quote from us once a year and then never hear from us again. We want to be a year-round resource. That's why we have the pre-claims assistance with our policies. We do 3 articles a month, have a newsletter, are active on social media and in the community giving presentations, and you'll see us almost every conference. We will actually at one of the last conferences, a vendor walked up to us and was like, I thought this one, because it was a smaller one, I thought this one was going to be the one conference I didn't see you, and yet here you are. So we try to be supportive.
Right.
When it comes to, questions of like, what should I get? What do I need? In terms of limits and deductible, endorsements. That is what the insurance industry would call a risk tolerance question.
Right.
Which is a fancy way of saying it depends on you.
Right.
And what we mean by that is what helps you sleep at night.
Right.
You know, with some states, like Florida is a great example, but I mean, Texas, a ton of states have requirements. They'll say minimum 300,000 in Arizona emissions, or they'll say if you're inspecting for mold, you need to be carrying $1 million in limits. Other states have no requirements, so then it becomes up to you.
Right.
We actually wrote a couple of articles, which I'll send you as well, on choosing limits and choosing deductibles, and we actually interviewed home inspectors on what choices they made, and we actually went and reviewed all of our policies to see what's most common.
Right.
So when it comes to deductibles, our policies, we offer $1,500, $2,500, or $5,000 for E&O, depending on your choice.
Okay.
And then we have a flat deductible of $1,000 for general liability.
Okay.
When it comes to what people are choosing, it's split between $1,500 and $2,500 for most inspectors, with a narrow margin doing the $5,000.
Okay.
Narrow margin doing the $5,000 probably because while you're saving maybe a couple $100 in premium every year, if you get a claim, you are, I think we actually made an infographic. I want to say what the cost was. It's something like it would take you 26 years to pay off the difference in just having to pay that deductible once for one claim.
Right.
So it's just, we usually recommend you get the smallest deductible that you can afford.
Right.
Just because the difference between the deductibles, again, is maybe a couple $100 a year.
Okay.
When it comes to limits, obviously do whatever is required, and then really think hard about your volume and your location. Volume, I mean, the more inspections you perform, the higher your risk of getting claims. And what your limits do, in case there's anybody out there who doesn't know what insurance limits are, insurance limits basically determine how much money is available to pay for claims.
Right.
So if you're getting 100,000 in limits, that means for the year, you have $100,000 to potentially spend on a claim.
Right.
That's the least we offer. 100,000 may be great for somebody starting out if they feel pretty comfortable and aren't going to be doing very many inspections. But once you start getting up there, and especially if you're inspecting multi-million-dollar homes or
in LA.
Yeah.
Your houses are expensive.
Yeah, they are. I mean, again, it's what gives you peace of mind, what helps you sleep at night. Right. Another thing to consider is if you have any people named as an additional insured on your policy.
Right.
If you're doing inspections for builders, if you are inspecting for a franchise, like AmeriSpec, Win, Pillar to Post, any of those, they're requesting an additional insured certificate from you.
Okay.
That means that if there's a claim, filed against you and they're accused as well, you're covering their defense costs too, which makes sense because if you're wearing their badge and saying that you inspect for them, you're making them liable. But then you really need to consider when you're selecting limits, do I have enough to defend myself and my franchisor and my builder?
Right.
That's another thing to consider.
Let me ask you this. Well, got a couple of questions, but the first one is,
Sure.
And I may talk to you. I don't even know who we have right now. I have to ask my wife. We've had different people over the years. But one thing we have to do, I have my termite license as well. And in North Carolina, for the termite part, it's required to have general liability and then a rider or an addition something that, and it's like groundwater contamination. And funny thing is, we don't even treat anymore. I used to years ago, but we still have to have it. Do you guys do that? Are you familiar with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So because we keep up to date on what states require, we have options available and that are specific to your state. We'll do bonds and riders that specifically apply to what your state is requiring. And when you renew or start your policy with us, we'll go ahead and send that stuff and proof of it directly to your licensing board so that you don't have to worry about it. That's what they require.
They want to make sure that I don't mess with it or anything.
Right.
I know you can't give an exact amount because there's so many variables, but maybe a range. Let's say I'm a one-man shop. I do about 350 inspections a year. Just myself. Roughly, what would I be looking at for general liability, errors and omissions at, I think you said, what, 1,000, 1,500, 2,500, or 5,000? I mean, just roughly, do you have a range? And I know there's a lot of variables, my experience, where I'm inspecting. Have I had other claims? Let's say I haven't. Or how long ago did I have a claim? That sort of thing. Is there a ballpark? What would we be looking at? Cost.
Right. Everybody wants to know rates. And the best way to figure that out is honestly to fill out a quote because of all those factors.
Right.
Typically, we tell people that the average policy is somewhere in the $1,500 to $2,000 range per year.
Right.
Granted, I've seen quotes for less than 1,000, not many, but some. And then especially once you have multi-inspector firms or a lot of claims, you're going to be seeing over 2,000.
Right.
So it really depends. The factors that go into your rate, and this is true of all providers, are these. They're going to be looking at your claims history, and they're going to be looking at your claims history over the last 5 years. Another thing to consider if you're shopping around is claims are weighed differently based on whether they're open or closed.
Right.
So open claims, especially to an outside insurance company, can be perceived as this could close at anything. It could close at $0. It could close at $3 million. We don't know. So we have to quote your premium a little higher than something that's closed and we know, okay, this costs however much. So when you're shopping around, it's ideal to shop with closed claims, unless, of course, you just don't like your insurance company. By all means, move.
Does the amount of the claim have any? I would think, depending on.
It does, but make sure. So it helps if you can find insurance underwriters. Those are the people who review claims and then determine premium amount based on claims. It helps when you have underwriters who consider the actual circumstances when they weigh into your rate.
Right.
We as an insurance provider work with multiple carriers. Carriers are the ones who actually write the different types of policies that you can buy. With our preferred carrier, we actually have more control with the underwriting process than most. Actually, as of about a year ago, I think we have, more control than almost anybody, if not everybody, in the home inspection industry, period. And what that means is the underwriter that we work with, we ask them pretty heavily to really look into exactly what happened to determining it. So if it was a meritless claim, or if the inspector did do a lot of things afterward to kind of change their practices to avoid types of claims like that in the future, they'll give the lowest percentage of rate increase possible.
Right.
That's why we always tell people, every insurance company will send you, after you get a claim, like a little form to fill out. And they'll basically ask you, hey, what happened? How much did they ask for? All that stuff.
Right.
Those things are gold.
Sure,
and why they're gold is it's your opportunity to tell your side of the story. Depending on your underwriter, depending on the time of year and different things like that, they don't necessarily have time to go through your entire report, your entire agreement, all of the correspondence you had with the claimant, all of the letters from the attorney. That's the first, and even if they do, that's the first thing they read.
Right.
So as much as possible, putting in there, not necessarily going off how terrible the claimant was and how terrible their accusation was and how you're perfect. That's not exactly what they want to hear. More of what they want to hear is what happened, just facts, and what did you learn? Even if it wasn't your fault, did you add something to your agreement to make sure, or did you train your inspectors on this so that you maybe explain this better, or you avoid getting into these types of situations? If you learned something and are a better inspector from it, even though you were put in a crappy situation, that really helps the underwriter see, hey, this guy's a great inspector. They're doing the absolute best they can. I don't see them as being much of a risk in the future.
Well, let me ask you this. My
Sure.
fear, I've always heard the horror stories. I had one claim and my insurance company dropped me, the next year. I mean, obviously, from your standpoint, you would be thinking this person's too much of a risk for whatever reason. What causes somebody to be dropped? And is there a threshold where, you shouldn't turn it into the insurance company because it's going to cost you more? I mean, I know that's different. That's probably another, for me, it's a fairly high one, because I don't want to turn it over to insurance. I'm going to try my best to get it resolved. If I can write the check for it, I'm going to write the check for it, not turn it into insurance. But I guess what's your advice on that? And, not getting dropped, I really don't want my rates to go up. I've always kind of looked at insurances for Armageddon to keep me from, but I've had the higher deductible too. So, if you're saying the deductible should be around 1,500 or whatever, then that's not Armageddon. So,
right.
You
so,
go ahead.
Number one, always, always, always report. I know it's scary to report because you don't want your premiums to go up. We know that it's scary to report because you also are just afraid of it being nothing and then having to pay $1,500.
Right.
But if you align yourself with a provider that's looking out for you, for example, with our primary carrier, what we do is if we can solve it for less than your deductible, you aren't charged your full deductible. And we charge a standard deductible or basic deductible, not what are they called? SIRs, self-insured retention.
Right.
Most insurance companies in this industry, what they'll do when they charge a deductible is they'll say, whatever, it's $1,500, just like Inspector Pro, but you owe it to us the second you report the claim. They won't defend you. They won't write a letter for you. They won't even look at your file until you pay them that money.
Wow.
First of all, it can be hard for some of these inspectors, especially if they're just starting out, to come up with $1,500 right out the gate.
Yeah.
And if they're not expecting it. Second of all, the issue with that is if they end up closing it for less than $1,500, most of those insurance companies won't give the money back. That's why we collect it at the end. It's a true deductible. You've already paid your premium. You're paying to have the coverage. We're not going to charge you the deductible until it's over, because it's when it's over that we know how much it actually cost. And if it's $1,500 or above, that's when you pay your $1,500, is after that point. So always report, because if you're with a provider that charges a standard deductible like we do, the most you're going to spend is your deductible. Now, when it comes to insurability, that should be one of your insurance company's primary concerns. We do everything we can to make sure that the claim is the least painful for you as possible. And what we mean by that is that we close it at the smallest amount possible and that we protect you for the next year. The problem is, like you said, your carrier is going to look at your claims history when they do your renewal, and they're going to base some of your premium, not all of it, off of that claims history. That's one of the reasons why when we are looking to defend claims, we try to close them as quickly as possible. Because again, a closed claim and an open claim are treated differently. when it comes to the threshold of insurability, it really varies from carrier to carrier. But that's one of the reasons it's nice to align with a provider rather than just a blanket carrier, because a provider of home inspection insurance, period, will have options so that even if you can't insure with our preferred carrier, we can find you coverage somewhere else.
Awesome. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I just got a couple more questions because I know you. I mean, I held you up for a long time, and but great information. All right, let's say that I'm with you guys, Inspector Pro.
Sure.
And I got a little problem brewing. I don't know how far to go. I want to contact your. So a couple of questions. How do I contact?
Pre-claims. Yeah.
And I thought you mentioned something about they would help you write a letter, maybe in response. I'm not sure. So how does that look like? Is that something I fill out online? Is that a phone call? What does that look like?
So pre-claims assistance is amazing. We've been doing it for about 3 years. We have an article about it, which again, I will send you. So pre-claims assistance works like this. The second you get the first whiff of something maybe going wrong, whether it's a phone call, angry text, email, whatever, we've even had people report a pre-claim when they hear something from the realtor. Like realtor calls the inspector and says, hey, this person's upset, just wanted to let you know.
Yeah.
The second you've gotten one of those, based on your nods.
I've gotten all the above.
Yeah, so the second you get a whiff of trouble, well seasoned, which is how we like it. But anyway, you get a whiff that something might be going wrong.
Right.
You can call us or you can email us. It kind of depends on how quick of a response you want. You can call your broker and report it as a pre-claim, and then we'll report it to the claims department, who you usually get in touch with you within about 48 hours, as long as it's a business day.
I've learned the first money is usually the cheapest. If you can solve something early, do it, because it'll grow. It's like a mushroom.
No, it will. The other alternative too is you can call our pre-claims department directly. Okay. So if you're like, this is urgent, you can call them directly and talk to them. We've had people, report a pre-claim and immediately get that assistance. Otherwise, sometimes you wait a couple of days depending on how busy they are, but they will get to you in a timely manner. And we'll actually give you a few tips on, if they're asking for a response. Usually what we recommend people say to the potential claimant is, hey, I understand your concern. I want to make sure that I address it, fairly and the way that it needs to be addressed. Give me some time to review the inspection report and agreement, and I'll get back to you.
I'll give you a real case scenario, one that I really had.
Sure.
And I solved it myself. All right, so this is a whole other discussion about like how much are your inspectors responsible, how much I have multi-inspectors, and for me, it's a scale. I mean, if it's something that they absolutely didn't do wrong, and I'm just trying to make, the realtor happy or something like that, I just pay for it. If it's something that they should have seen, absolutely should have seen, and I mean, they have to be responsible for that, because you can't go out and do a crappy job and me just pay for everything. I mean, there has to be, a lot of times there's somewhere in the middle, we split it or something. That's how I work. So anyway, I get a call. Hey, you inspected my house. We got squirrels in the attic, and the lights are going in and out because they're chewing on the electrical wires. We're worried. We've got a quote. It's like $4,000, but, we got to get this fixed. We're worried the house is going to burn down, and we're thinking about moving out. No! And if they move out, the odometer on that's going up high. So I'm like, we got to solve this problem real quick. Before, we don't want to move out, because then it's like every meal, everything's going to be on us. And the house might burn down in the midterm. Now, so Chip went out there, and sure enough, he went up in the attic. Our guy should have seen it. There were gnaw marks everywhere. There was a nest. There was stuff, so he took electrical tape and taped up where the thing was, but we got to fix this. So we got another quote. It was like $3,800, I think. I'm talking to the inspector, how do you want to resolve this? He's like, well, I know a guy, but he can't come out there until 4 days. And I'm like, I can't wait 4 days. I got to solve this now. So, I told him, I was like, let's do the $3,800 and we'll just split it or something. He still wanted his guy, but I'm like, dude, I don't think you understand. You're going to try to save $1,000, and it's going to wind up costing us 10 if these people move out or more. So anyway, that's how I handled it. how would I do that with the claims assistant? Can I get help with that? What would you think?
Yeah, so what we do with pre-claims assistance is before you did anything, you would call them.
Right.
And they would give you advice based on the urgency of the situation. I'm not a claims person, so I can't tell you exactly what our claims person would say. I'm just the marketing person who reports on what the claims people do. But my guess of what they would tell you is they would advise you on how quickly to respond and how to respond. They would make sure too that you were able to get a good release before doing any payout if you did decide hey, I do want to settle.
Always.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't, and that's why it's so important. So our pre-claims assistants would talk you through it. And again, if you called them saying, look, I want to settle this now, they're upset, I also know the realtor, I want to preserve the relationship, whatever the case may be, they're like, okay, it's noticed. So if it does explode, even after you settle, we already know about it. Here's a release specific to this situation. Here's a couple other recommendations I want to tell you as to what to say to them verbally about this. They might even give you instructions on pictures to take during the, re-inspection when you go back over there to make sure the squirrels are actually there and they're not making it up. And they'll talk you through it. You can even call them back and tell them how it went.
Right.
But they'll draft any of the letters and releases you need. They'll walk you through. I mean, we'll even role play it with you. And,
cool.
and because you're a multi-inspector firm, you've seen a lot of claims before. Some of the guys that we get, especially if they're newer inspectors or smaller shops, they don't deal with complaints every day, and they don't know how to respond. Sometimes the inspectors, when they call us, are so angry that we need to go through it a couple of times with them so that they can respond in a calm.
Do not be defensive. I'll tell anybody listening to this.
Yeah.
You got to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, in their mind, they have a legitimate problem. You got to see it from their shoes, not from yours. But if you call them and you're defensive, you're just going to compound your problem.
And our job is to see it from both. Our job is to see it the way that your claimant is seeing it, where they have a real problem. And then we also try to see it from your perspective.
Yeah, sure.
We try to understand what you're experiencing and what it's like so that we can give you the best counsel possible. Like I said, pre-claims assistance doesn't work every time, but it works 80% of the time. And if it doesn't work, we'll give you the discount on your deductible. And that's awesome. And that's why it ends up being a win-win either way.
I've just got one or two questions on it. We did like three questions.
Ask me as many as you want.
Yeah, I don't want to hold you up anymore. But a couple of things. What would your advice be to a home inspector when they have an unhappy camper? I mean, and they're live on the phone. They don't have time. They don't have time to call your thing and talk to them and get an idea. You did an inspection for me 6 months ago. I can tell you right now, 6 months. It's not going to be a good call. No, you missed something. My contractor's out here, and he said you should have seen X, Y, Z. What are you going to do about it? How would you advise a home inspector to respond, at least initially?
So as usual, we have an article about that. It's called How to Handle That Customer Resolving Complaints Against Your Home Inspection Business.
Right.
The first thing that's important to do is you are gathering information at this point. When they're calling you to complain, you're listening for a lot of it.
Sure.
You're saying, okay, what did you experience? What happened? A lot of people, so there's actually, the White House did a study. They did a Consumers Affairs report. And in that study, they found that twice as many people will share, bad news, like a bad service experience, rather than good news. So a lot of times when you're getting a complaint, like it's just, the fact is you're more likely to get abuse than praise. and they kind of just want to be listened to a great degree. So part one is listening. And listening doesn't just benefit them, it benefits you because you need to understand what they're upset about. So gather as much information as possible. Make sure that you understand, what the issue is, exactly what they're seeing. And when it showed up, they might be calling like, hey, this thing happened, you inspected 6 months ago. Well, when did you find the issue? 6 months ago. Well, why don't you tell me?
Yeah.
And what has happened in between that time that you initially found it and why you're calling me right now? You need to know that kind of stuff because hopefully your inspection agreement also says, what their responsibilities are in reporting defects to you. Like, tell me within a certain amount of time of finding the issue and both of when I perform the inspection. The other thing that you can do over the phone in that initial call is set and reset expectations. If they're immediately saying, hey, it's a mold issue, here's all this stuff, and you didn't inspect for mold and you never do, it's okay to say that right up front. And you should say that right up front because it's an expectation that you have been setting the whole time. So reset expectations if necessary. And if resetting expectations and regurgitating the things that are already written in your agreement and report aren't satisfactory yet, that's when you say, you know what, give me a little time to look over the agreement and the report and I'll get back to you. And that's when you call pre-claims assistance. And even if you're able to resolve it on your own, we still recommend you call pre-claims assistance to at least report it and put it on notice just in case they end up coming back.
Sure.
Because sometimes, and as you know, because you're already getting releases, what some home inspectors don't is if you admit fault in any way, and sometimes payout is considered admitting fault in a settling kind of circumstance, if you don't get that release, they can come after you for anything under this.
You're like a bank. You're like an ATM machine.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Some guys do this, and I think this is good. In addition to what you said, they'll have a form either on their website or Dropbox or something where they have them fill it out, which sometimes can be great for two reasons. First of all, it lets them vent it out, and second of all, they don't even realize that sometimes you're asked to tell me about when it happened. They're incriminating. I don't know if incriminate is the right word, but they're clearing you without knowing it by some of the stuff they're writing down, by all the data. You know what I mean? Like you said, when did it show up?
We love forms like that.
It started showing up 6 months ago, and you've got that written down, and it's gotten worse since then. Well, now you have some ownership in that because you've known about it for 6 months and you haven't said anything. That sort of thing.
Forms like that are great. They're not something that are required, but they're definitely a great resource. There was a guy I talked to at the most recent conference I went to that said he has one of those forms, and what he does in that form is the first couple of questions are actually, did you read the full inspection agreement? Did you read the full report? Do you understand this, and that?
Was it Dave Schwartz out of Arizona?
I
know he has.
No.
Might be another one.
It was, I forget who it was. I wrote down his name, but I don't know it immediately.
That's good, though, because then that forces them to go back and, maybe I should, And funny, side note here, not funny, but sometimes when I go out to handle a claim or, I'm looking at stuff and I already know what they're complaining about is in the report, I take a copy of the report and I highlight the stuff, okay? Now, here's what I do. I go and I listen and I'm empathetic, and then I try to explain my case, but I'm so understanding. And, a lot of times I will refund their money, even if we're wrong, just to get the release and be happy with. But I accidentally, on purpose, leave that copy of that report with that stuff highlighted. So I don't know, call it what you want, but my hope is they pick it up and they go right to it and like, ooh, you did say this, and it is in here, and we have no case. We better take that refund and sign that release. And some people are against that, but I'm just like, if there's a potential for these people being crazy or suing me, like you said, you could be right as right can be, and they can still sue you, and it's going to cost you money. And, sometimes giving that $400 or $500 back, I say it's a cheap reward.
Yeah, as always, it's one of those.
Be done with it. Let's part ways.
It's a risk palette, peace of mind question, right?
Right.
There's nothing that says in, at least none of our insurance policies, there's nothing that says in our insurance policies that you have to settle complaints before they turn into claims, or else we won't cover your claims. Give us notice so we can try to help you, but if you're not willing to refund the fee right at the gate, you don't necessarily have to. However, if it gives you peace of mind to resolve things as quickly as possible before they turn into claims, and if you know that you can save yourself potentially from having to pay more in premiums from having more claims, then by all means do it. Just make sure that even if you're solving it yourself, you're reporting it to pre-claim, so that in case it doesn't get solved and they come back 3 months later, we can still help you.
And get a release.
Yeah.
All right, 2 last questions, and then I'll let you go. What is the wildest, weirdest, or craziest claim or thing you've heard of? Have you had any? And these have been some doozies. I usually ask home inspectors, or just craziest story you've heard or something. I mean, maybe it wasn't even a claim. Do you have any story? And I don't mean to put you on the spot or anything.
So we've seen some interesting ones. I think my favorite one was we got a claim for an inspection that was performed 18 years ago.
18 years ago? Holy cow. How did they even have the report? I mean, where was the report? Was it on a stone tablet?
I know. I'll be honest. I mean, I laughed. The inspector laughed too, so I didn't feel bad for laughing. But when we heard that the claim was from 18 years ago, we laughed.
Oh my gosh.
Obviously, that was an easy one. It got dropped very quickly because even lawyers and judges who aren't familiar with the home inspection industry know that literally anything can happen to a house in 18 years. I mean, oh my goodness.
The standards have changed too. I mean, you'd have to look up the laws from 18 years ago. I'm not even sure there were home inspection laws then. You know, you can't. So
that was definitely crazy. That was a crazy one for us. And then if you want other fun stories, we actually did a contest a few months ago, a funny home inspector story contest, and we still have all their results published. They had a few really good ones. One guy got chased by a turkey. Another guy, well, I won't spoil them. I'll send you the link.
Okay, awesome. I'll try to put it in the
funny stories.
Awesome. Well, last question. This really doesn't have to do with insurance, but you are a marketing person, and lots of home inspectors struggle with that. So with the last question, and obviously I'll get all your information at the end so that everybody who was listening can follow up with you with questions and things. Let's say that I'm a home inspector. I wake up tomorrow morning in a brand new city. I jacked this question from John Lee Dumas. So this is the question he asked. But you wake up in a brand new city. You still have all the equipment. You still have all that room and board taken care of. You're just in a brand new city, and you don't know anybody, and you have $5,000 to start marketing yourself. What do you think would be the most effective use of that $5,000 in their first week or two to market themselves in a brand new market? So it's kind of an ROI question.
Okay. As a marketing person, being a home inspector in this situation, this is probably what I would do. First thing I would do is build a website, and you could even do it for free on like Wix or Squarespace or whatever.
Right.
I would then do, and this is kind of cheating because I know how to do this, but I would do a Facebook ads campaign. You can run a really great Facebook ads campaign for like $250. And market directly to realtors, like anybody who is in your geographic location who's a realtor.
Right.
Doing an advertisement saying, hey, go to my website and schedule a meeting with me, and I'll go and present. I'd then print flyers and drop them off at a bunch of open houses in the area and say, hey, you're looking to buy a house or a house in general. I perform home inspections. Here's my flyer with my rate. And if you mention the flyer when you call me, you get a discount or whatever.
Right.
I would also I would pay to join any local chapter or organization of home inspectors in my area to network.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably wouldn't even cost $5,000. So since I'm a foodie, I'd probably go to dinner with my husband and then I'd be done at the end of my week. But hopefully I will have scheduled some things from having my website, my ads campaign, and those flyers and contact the organization. So yeah.
Well, Stephanie, thank you very much for your time. It's been very beneficial. I think I'm going to title this top 5 things that get home inspectors in trouble and how to stay out of home inspector jail or something along that line. But, great information. I know a lot of the listeners got lots of gold nuggets. Couple of things. How can they find out more about you? I mean, in your company and, you know, all the stuff you talked about. What are all the web addresses? And is there anything we can do for you? Can we go and give you some likes or things on your Facebook page or any? Will that help you? Because you've given us value. We'd like to give you some value.
Well, I appreciate it. And I really appreciate you asking me to be on the podcast. So again, our website is inspectorproinsurance.com. You can find all of our articles there. If you're interested in our content, the best thing that you can do is subscribe to our newsletter. We send out our newsletter twice a month, and it's when we publish new content. So you'll get it straight to your inbox with the title of what it is and a direct link to where it is so you can go and read it. That's how most of our audience actually keeps up.
Yeah.
And you can find that subscription link. I'll send it to you, but it's also on our Facebook page. If you want to support us because you're already insured with us or you just like what we're doing, definitely like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn as well. We even have a Google Plus page, but nobody else does that anymore.
I don't know. I still have one because they said it helps you with your SEO, but nobody goes on there, but Google owns it, so.
But mostly Facebook. We also have a YouTube page, but all of the videos that we do, we put on all the social networks. So, but yeah, and if you've liked your experience with us or even liked just reading our content, write a review for us on Facebook.
Awesome.
Because the only way, I mean, you know it because you're a home inspector. There are so many resources out there for home inspectors. And most of the time when you're getting a recommendation for whether it's like the report writing service you use or the association that you join or, you know, the equipment that you buy, you're usually making those decisions based upon recommendations that you're getting from other people in the industry. Same thing applies to insurance. So if you're liking the stuff that we're doing, if you like the experience you've had with us or the education that you've received, definitely tell people on Facebook because that's where they're going to look to know whether or not we're a good fit for them.
Okay, so it's inspectorproinsurance.com. Is that what it is? Or
Yep, inspectorproinsurance.com.
Is there, I don't want to can they email you directly if they have a question?
Sure.
What's your
email? So my email actually, so this is our general email, but I'm the one who checks it. It's our marketing email.
Okay.
We protect at inspectorproinsurance.com because our tagline is we protect, you inspect.
Oh,
so
nice.
We protect at inspectorproinsurance.com.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. Tell your husband thank you for allowing you to have a little time with us, and I appreciate all the value you bring. And on a personal note, I'll probably be talking to you about my insurance.
Of course. Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Stephanie. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.